Hey, welcome to this lesson on learning the Nashville number system. Hey, I'm Steve Krenz for Guitar Gathering, your home for real nuts and bolts guitar learning. And today we're going to talk about the Nashville number system. I'm a guitarist here in Nashville and I play in studios all the time, and we use this type of notation all the time. So there's standard musical notation that you're going to see a lot, and there's tab notation. But in the studios back in the 50s, some of the musicians there, Chet Atkins and some of these other musicians, Harold Bradley, these legendary guitarists, they kind of developed a little shorthand for notating chords. So instead of just writing out everything, all these pages of music, they kind of just developed this shorthand. Now, it's not a new thing. Music has been referred to by numbers for centuries, going all the way back to Pythagoras, so it's not a new concept, but relating chords in this way is a valuable way to kind of see and understand, even if you're not in the studio, but just to see and understand how chords are relating to each other. So a lot of folks have questions about it, so I thought we would get into that. Now there's a download that goes along with this lesson. Just click the YouTube link in the description, and you can download that PDF. It's all free, just to give you some examples of what we're talking about. So if you can download that and have that as we go through it, that'll help you as we go through this lesson. So the first thing you need to know about the Nashville number system is it is based off of the relationship of chords within a key. So that's the first thing that we need to cover. In any key, there's 12 different keys, C and G and D. There's 12 different keys, but within a key, if you build up the triads within that key, you get a certain pattern that is true in any key. Okay? And the pattern is a pattern of certain chords become major, certain chords become minor, chords that are built off of a certain scale degree. So you've got to know the major scale first. So if we were in the key of C, if you look at that PDF and look down to the one image, about 2/3 of the way down the page there, you will see the key of C. And that's just the harmonized major scale. So if you look at all the triads going up, now this isn't the first example, this is just the harmonized major scale. Now if I'm looking at that, and I take the C major scale and I just build triads on every one of the scale steps. Now there's 7 scale steps in the key of C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. You end up with this pattern of chords. So I don't want to get into the theory of that too much. Just understand certain chords are major, certain chords are minor, and then you have the 7 chord, the chord built off of the 7th step, is this diminished triad. Half diminished if you take it into a 4-note chord. So take a look at what we have here. The C chord is the first chord that's built off of it. That would be called the 1 chord. Now in theory, in music theory, we use the Roman numerals, the uppercase and the lowercase Roman numerals, but in the studio, in the Nashville number system, we translate to those just to be regular numbers. So in the music theory end, I wanted to show it to you first. The C chord, the chord built off of the 1, is a major chord. The chord built off of the 2nd step of the scale, the D, ends up being a minor. The chord built off of the 3rd step of the scale, the E, that's a minor as well. The chord built off of the 4th step, the F, that's a major chord. The chord built off of the 5th step, that's a major chord. The 6th step, that's a minor chord. And the 7th chord, that's the diminished chord. So you end up with this pattern. Here's what you need to know. The major chords are on 1, 4, and 5. Those are all major chords. And it's true in any key. If I'm in the key of C, the 1 chord would be a C major, not a C minor. If I'm in the key of C and I want the 5 chord, that is major as well. If I want the 4 chord, that's major as well. But if I switch to like the chord built off of the 2nd step of the scale, the D, that ends up being minor. So the 3 major ones are 1, 4, and 5. The 3 minor ones are 2 minor, 3 minor, and 6 minor. Now the 7 is a diminished. You're not going to see that near as much. The main ones are going to be 1 through 6 that you're going to see. And this is true in any key. So if I'm in the key of G, the 1, the 4, the 5, those are all major chords. So I don't have in the key of G an A major. That doesn't go according to the pattern, because that would be built off of the 2, and of course 2s are what? 2s are minor, okay? So that's the little background that you have there. Certain chords are major, certain chords are minor, and it's true in any key. All right, with that as our foundation musically of what's going on, flip to the next page. This would be the second page there, and we're going to get to some examples of how Nashville number system works. All right, so here's the deal. Take a look at this first example. We're going to try and put that on the screen here. The first example, we've got a simple chord progression. This is in the key of C. We've got a C, an A minor, a D minor, and a G. Okay, so this would be a C would be the 1, the A minor would be the 6 minor, and then the D minor would be the 2 minor, and then the G would be the 5. So you have to kind of know their relationship. 1, 6, 2, 5. And how this translates into the Nashville number system is over the C chord, I would replace that with a 1. The A minor, I would replace that with a 6 with a slash. Okay, so that little minus sign, that is meaning that indicates minor. There, and the 2 with a slash, that indicates the 2 is a minor. And then the 5, since that's major, he just is what it is. So that progression, a C, an A minor, a D minor, and a G ends up being 1, 6 dash, 2 dash, that's the D minor, and that's the 5. And the G turns into the 5. So see what that is? I've taken a progression and I've translated it into numbers. Okay? Now, here's the beauty of this. Hey, can we play this song in the key of D? Sure can, as long as I have the numbers. Now I transpose the key of D over this, so the key of D, the 1 chord would be the D, the 6 minor would be D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, but it would be minor, so we end up with a B minor. The 2 minor would be an E minor, and then the 5 would be an A if I'm in the key of D. What if I was in the key of G? All right, you think it with me. If I'm in the key of G, what's the 1 chord? It's pretty easy. That's a G. Okay? What would be, let's say, the 6 minor? You gotta count up the scale. G, A, B, C, D, E, and that would be minor. E minor. Okay? And then the 2 chord would be in the key of G, an A minor, and then the 5 would be a D. Now, I realize the musical calculations that we're making here, you're going to have to think about a little bit there. But that's basically how this works. So it's a shorthand for writing chords down. And that's basically how the numbers are translating there. Let's take a look at another example. And I'll show you how, when we add things to these chords, how that's handled. Okay, so take a look at example number 2. The original chord progression we have is like a G9 chord, and then a C major, then a D sus, then back to a C. So if this was in the key of G, which is what we're going to assume it is, how I would write that in Nashville numbers is the G is the 1, okay? The 2 would be an A minor, the 3 would be a B minor, the 4 would be a C, 5 would be a D, 6 would be an E minor, 7 would be this F sharp diminished, okay? All right, so if I wrote that in Nashville numbers, I have a 1 with a 9, kind of a superscript 9 there. So anything that's like a color tone on a chord, they write that as just a number, and then whatever color tone it is. If it's a sus, or if it's a 9, or a 13, or a flat 9, or whatever, they just put that next to it. All right? The 4 would be a C. Look at the D sus. Well, I write 5, and then I write sus. If you guys want to see what this looks like, there's the third page of your thing. There's an example, which we're going to get to in a minute. Okay, we're not going to do that right now. But if you want to look at how this looks, wow, you take a look at it, it looks like a science experiment at first. We're going to explain what all that is telling you. And as we build into it, you'll be able to see how that goes. All right, so that's the second example. Okay, the original chord progression is a G, then any color tones, I just put that as a superscript up there. Any additions to it, a sus. Now, typically in here in Nashville, we do a lot of country music, and the sus almost always entirely means you're suspending the fourth. So instead of playing the third, you're playing the fourth. Okay, instead of a 1-3-5 of a triad, you're playing 1-4-5. Now, in European notation, you'll see sus referring to the 2 or the 4, the second step or the fourth step. But here on the U.S. side of things, it is typically, it's always, almost always, a suspended fourth. Now, it does that so much that they just shorten it, and so even when you just see sus, not even sus4, it's referring to the fourth. Okay? Cool. Take a look at the next example there. All right, so talk about how it works with different, how do you do inversions in Nashville numbers? Okay, well, here's how inversions work. So if you look at we're back in the key of C, okay? And look, we've got a chord there at the end that is not in the key, so it'll show you how we handle that. Look at the second chord. I have a C with a slash and an E. That is a C chord with an E in the bass. The third in the bass. So you can have different bass notes. I mean, here's a C chord. There's a G in the bass. If that was written, it would be a C/G. If I have an E in the bass, that's what it sounds like. So they get slightly different sounds. They're all C, but whether the third or the fifth is in the bass gives it a little bit of a different variation in the tonality and in the character of the sound. And so that's how we handle that in numbers. I just put a slash. So it's not a fraction. It kind of looks like a fraction, but it's not a fraction. But that's how we handle it. So we just do the slash, and then we put the numeral of what that tone is in the key of C. That's how that's handled in Nashville numbers. So take a look at the fourth chord. I have an F7, or excuse me, the third chord. It's an F7, that's the 4, okay? And so I have that little superscript 7 there, okay? Now, oh my goodness, what is this last chord? A G minor with a B flat in the bass. Well, you got to think, everything right now is going to be in the world of C, okay? So a G in the world of C would be the 5, but 5s are major, but they want this to be minor, so that's why they put that 5 with the dash on it. Okay, so that tells you right there it's a G minor. It's a 5, but it's minor, so it's got the little dash there. Now, but it also has another note in the bass. So we have the slash. That's where the slash is. And what do we have there? We've got a flat 7. Well, in the key of C, the 7th step would be a B. If that's flatted, it would be a B flat. So the chord they're trying to tell you there is a G minor with a B flat in the bass. Now, I know what you're saying to yourself right now. Steve, music is already complex enough. Why do I have to then make it more complicated by these formulas to try and decipher what's going on? Well, here's where that comes into play. If I'm playing a song, so let me go over here to my pad. If I'm playing the song, and let's say my song is in the key of G. So I'm going to put a G over here. I'm going to circle that. Okay? And I want it to be a 1 chord, and then I want it to be the 4 chord for a measure. Then I want it to be maybe the 5 chord, but let's make it a sus. And then let's maybe go to a 5-7. All right, so that progression in G would be, the 1 would be a G, the 4 would be a C, the 5 sus would be a D suspended. So I can just write it in here. G, C, D suspended to a D seventh. So I would look at that and I would play this. Let's talk about meter and rhythms. You'll notice there's no rhythm indicated right there. Well, if I'm in natural numbers and I see just the number, then that means generally that this is a shorthand. So there's the rules for this aren't well worked out. There's a lot of variation here. But usually when you just see the number, that means you're going to hold it for a whole bar. And then, so I would do a bar of G in 4 times. So it'd be 4 beats of G, 4 beats of C, 4 beats of the D sus, and 4 beats of the D7. Well, Steve, why didn't you just write G, C, D7, or D sus and D7? Well, hey, can we put this in the key of A? Well, sure can. Normally, I'd have to write all that stuff out again, but I don't have to write it out again because I wrote it in numbers. Now I'm going to play it in the key of A. Ready, go. The 1 in A would be an A. The 4 in A would be a D. The 5 would be an E suspended. And the 5/7 would be an E seventh. Okay? So the beauty of it is I can write a whole chart out and put it in 3 different keys, and it's gonna, I don't have to write the whole thing out. I just go play it in G, play it in A, play it in B flat or whatever. So you can write out a whole lot of musical information with not very, you'll notice I only just wrote 4 numbers, and I've already got 4 bars, and I can translate it into any key. So it's pretty easy to write songs out this way in chords, and this is what we use in the studio all the time. All the time. But let me show you how we handle a couple of other different situations. What if we didn't want a chord? What if you had like 2 chords in a bar? How is that handled? Well, here's how that is handled. So let's say I wanted to go a 2 minor to a 4, but I wanted those to be in the same measure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a little line underneath them. So that means, and then I could go on with my progression, you know, let's say 1, let's say 5, 7. Okay, so this means I have a D minor, or sorry, if I'm in the key of, let's say, C, I would have a D minor to an F, and they would be equally spaced within that bar. But Steve, what if I don't want them equally spaced? Well, then usually what you'll see is you'll see something like this, slash, 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 and then a slash over the top. So that's telling me that it would be a D minor, 2, 3, then an F, then a bar of F, C, the bar G7. So if I want a specific rhythm, they will write it above the number there. All right, so now let's talk about some other parts of this. So flip over to the example. This is one day, okay? So on the screen, we'll take a look at this. All right. I know this is a lot of musical math coming at you. You got to know your keys and key signatures here. Hey, welcome to being a Nashville studio musician. You have to do this a lot. So, all right, so take a look at one day, and let's see what's happening here. All right, first of all, this is an actual song that I played in the studio, okay? Now, you got to take a look at that. Notice along the left-hand side, I've got intro, and then I have V and C, and then I have inter for interlude, V for verse, C for chorus. The B is the bridge, and then it has a C right there at the bottom, just says 2 times. Okay, so I've basically written out here a 4.5-minute song in, 1 page of this. The intro, I'm going to play a 1 and then a 4. You can't really tell it because it was not written very clearly, but you have a 4 with a 7, and that's going to be a major 7th there. So that little triangle, which is a little small for him to write out, that little triangle is telling you that's a major 7th, the jazz way of writing it. Okay? So he's telling you to go from a 1 to a 4 major 7. That's going to be the intro, 2 bars long. Okay? So if I'm in the key of D, notice it says D right up at the top, so I would play this intro. D to a G major 7th. Take a look at the verse. Okay, so these are the verse chords. Now, first of all, look at what's happening here. I got the 5 chord in the key of D. That would be an A. And then I've got a split bar with that line with a 4 over 1. So that would be a G chord with a D in the bass going to the D. Then I have the next bar is just a 5. So that would be an A. And then look what I have here. I've got a 1, which would be a D, and then I've got 3 little slashes over the top of those. So that means I would do that for 3 beats. And then I have a 3, 7. Well, Steve, shouldn't that be a minor? You're right, it should be a minor. But the fact that he wrote that 7 in and did not write the minor in is screaming at me that this is going to be, he wants that to be a 3, 7. So in the key of D, that would be a B7. Okay? Going to the 6 minor for 1 beat, which would be in the key of D, that would be a, what did I say? I said, I'm sorry, that would be an F sharp 7, it would be the 3. Going to a B minor, that would be the 6. And then the 5 would be an A, the 4 would be a G, and then you have a 3 after that, okay? Now, I'm sorry, a 1 with a 3 in the bass. D with an F sharp in the bass. Wow, see how confusing it gets already. So if I were to play that verse, okay, so we're in the key of D, okay, 1, 2, this would be the verse, starts on an A, 2, 3, 4, then a G with a D in the bass, to a D, then to the A, then here comes the D, F sharp 7 here, B minor. Looks like that's all in 1 bar. So each one of those would get 1 beat. So it'd be B minor, A, G, D with an F sharp. Then the next line, I have a 5 sus, A suspended. So if I played all that verse, it'd be like this. 1, 2, verse, ready, and ready, go. A, G with a D in the bass. Back to A, D, 1 quick F sharp 7 here, down the scale. And that's how I would get through that whole verse. So you see, I wrote a lot of music there with just a few notations. Take a look at the chorus, the next section. How would you read that? Well, I have a D, that would be the 1. Then a D7, split bar, going to a 4, which would be a G. And then you can't hardly see, but I scribbled in a 6, so he's doing actually a G6 there. Then it goes to a 4 minor, and then a 1 over 3, to a 5 sus, A suspended, to a 1 to a 5. So anyway, you get the idea. See how that works. Now, I want to show you one more thing. Let's go back over to our pad here for a second. And if I wanted to write a specific rhythm, okay, so you'll see this sometimes too. So if I wanted to write like a 1, and then I want to go to a 1 with 3 in the bass, but I want this to be a, let's say, a dotted quarter, and then this to be an 8, I would write it like that. So I'm telling the player to play that particular rhythm, and it would be written like that. Another way to write that would be 1 over 3, and you put a little comma right there. That's another way to write that this is pushed, this is anticipated. Okay, so that would be, if I was in C, it'd be 1, 2, do it again, and There you go. So there's all kinds of different variations and ways that you can write it, and things that you can notate with it. If you look down at the bridge, back at the One Day song, let me just talk you through the last little bit of that. If you look at the bridge of that, you'll notice it has a little repeat sign. So that means I'm going to repeat that bridge a few times, and then I'm going to play the chorus 2 times in Being Out with it. Anyway, that's a good introduction to basically what the Nashville notation system is. Why bother with that? Here's the deal. So you can go through a lot of different keys quickly and without having to write the song out all the time. Okay? So I see some of y'all are already worried about the math that you have to do with this in order to figure this out. Just realize this is a shorthand. This is a musical shorthand, just like if you were in a courtroom and they have the little stenographer there, she's using a little shorthand there of how to do it. And if you looked at it, it would just be squiggles and little dots. It's actually representing things. Same thing with this. So let me just show you a few examples of this. These are literally some songs I did yesterday. Okay, so if we go back over here to the camera here, this is a song we did yesterday called Bridges or Walls. And you can see how we've got the intro, the verse, the choruses, and the outro. I've got a first and second ending, little notation there. I'm supposed to hold that there. There's retards. There's this. I've got a bridge written at the bottom here. All of this information is written on this page. Again, it's in 6/8. I'm in the key of D. Okay? Here's another one. Hang on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. This one about killed me last night. Okay? This song, a very complicated song that goes in 3 different keys. And then we actually did it in 3 keys. So, and I was going a capo chart and acoustic guitar part with capo, and then I had to go back and read a regular chart as well for this. So I ended up doing this song in about every key there was. So anyway, that's just some ideas of how this works. What that means for you. What can the average guy get out of knowing that? Just kind of realize that chords fit together in a key the same. In any key, the relationship is the same. 1, 4, and 5 are major. 2, 3, and 6 are always going to be minor. And you write those in notation there. I've been on a bandstand, and what's the intro to the song? And the bass player would, first of all, he'd do something like this, which means 2 flats, because it's aimed down, so that means we're in the key of B flat. And he would yell 1465, which means the intro is going to be a B flat, 1, a 4, an E flat, 6, a G minor, and then a 5 would be the F. So when he just yelled at me and pointed like this, 2 down, and yelled 1465, we were able to get that whole intro, and all that information was passed. So it's just kind of a musical shorthand. Anyway, that is a little bit of information about the Nashville number system. Now, if you want to know more about this with infinite examples from the studio, I invite you to check out my buddy Chaz Williams. His book, the link is down in the YouTube description below, The Nashville Number System. This is the kind of the official, authoritative, I think he's on his 10th edition of this now. In the back of this book are real charts out of real studios, and how this is the best book I have found for explaining the Nashville number system and actually working it. Now, you've learned kind of what it is. So now it's time to practice it. So we're going to do a workout in the next session. There's going to be a workout where you can grab your guitar. I'm going to go through some basic songs, and we're going to figure them out in Nashville numbers so you can play them along with me. So you can not just get this information, but really understand it and get it underneath your fingers. So make sure and check out the workout that we're going to do for the Nashville number system as well. Hey, I'm Steve Krenz for Guitar Gathering. Keep up the great work in your own learning. I hope you've learned something, and we will see you next time.